Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Welcome to NHL Wraparound, brought to you by UBS Financial Services, Inc. Vic Morren, Neil Smith. It is our season finale, and as we bring Dave Pagnotta in from the fourth period, Neil, we should have a little bit of background as to why I wear a Hawaiian shirt for our last show of every season.
And it's not about, something that I would make fun of, that he might be, also have no pants on or something like that. So go ahead.
Well, nonetheless, this is your tradition. I wore the coral 2 years ago and the blue last year, so we're back to the coral this year. But Dave, before we get into the nuts and bolts of our discussion,
right?
You're from Montreal, you live in Toronto, but Ottawa has made a lot of news in the Senators, and I think you have until the end of the day tomorrow to trade in your officially licensed Brady Tkachuk jersey in exchange for a 40% discount on other merchandise or jerseys. So you don't have a Tkachuk jersey, do you?
I do not. No, not one of those. I missed out on that deal.
Neil, get into it.
Well, we want to welcome Dave Pagnotta to the NHL Wraparound podcast. Thank you for doing this, Dave. I love your work. You've done a lot of work. You're on top of things, and you're out there all the time, which is great. We're trying to catch up to people like you.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, we appreciate you coming on. And I guess, Vic, do you want to start with the update on free agents?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of UFAs that are still out there, and the one that appears to be closest to signing, and I believe you had some reporting on it on Friday, is Claude Giroux, possibly going back to the Flyers. The other names out there right now, Patrick Kane, Michael Bunting, Anthony Mantha, Vlad Tarasenko, John Klingberg, Logan Stanley, Cam Talbot, and Patrick Laine. But let's start with where Giroux is as of Monday morning.
Yeah, well, the information I got on Friday came from a number of different people, including a few teams. And the consensus was, the belief / consensus was that he was going back to Philly. I still believe that that's number one, and still think that that's probably the trajectory, unless something has changed in the last half hour. But there was still some belief there that that's the case. And some people on other teams saying that, he's been kind of indicating that he's going back. So I guess we wait. A few things have changed in Philly since that information, with the offer sheet to Leo Carlsson and them kind of navigating those waters. But I'd be a little bit surprised if that's not the case, if he doesn't end up back there. But obviously, things kind of change on a dime. But and if it doesn't happen, then I owe Flyer fans a big apology. But that was the information I had on Friday. And usually when that kind of stuff kind of all trickles one after another, it goes down. But nothing yet, I guess, as we're recording this.
Before we get into the Carlsson offer sheet, any other updates on any of the players that I had mentioned that might be close to joining a new team or perhaps re-signing with their old one?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of teams, nothing is close, or nothing coming into today was close with Patrick Laine. But there are teams that are looking at him as a potential option in terms of a low AAV, like 1.5, 1.2 in that range, with bonuses tied to it. I know that's been kind of cooking there on that front. But, with the way things are going, with how the market's being played out, there's still a lot of teams engaged in some trade discussions. And this goes for a lot of these different free agents. And I'll add Eli Tolvanen into that mix too, along with everybody you mentioned, just guys that have generated interest, that have options, but a lot of their options are geared towards teams potentially doing something else before they get heavier into discussions with some of these players. And there are teams looking, like Detroit's looking to add another mid-six winger. You have other teams, Calgary's looking to add a couple of pieces if they can as well. And some teams that were in the mix on some of these guys, they've shifted and they've made some decisions, and now they're just kind of waiting until either the asks go down or they take care of other business.
The guy that I'm most interested in, well, I'm interested in a couple of guys that I talked about the other day on the show, but Anthony Mantha had a comeback season, came back from the dead, it seemed like, and a tremendous season for the Pittsburgh Penguins. In fact, I once mentioned in one of the games, gosh, he looks like Phil Esposito, the way he could march into the crease and put it in the net. You never know whether he can keep that up. Will his injuries come back again, because he's been so injury prone during his career? But Anthony Mantha had a tremendous year for Pittsburgh. I'm sort of surprised that a 33 goal scorer is still out there.
Yeah, and I think, with the season that he had was kind of a reclamation project type of year. Pittsburgh took advantage of that. Obviously, he did as well with the additional ice time and more responsibility, and it cashed in for him numbers wise. He's been looking for term on his deal, and I think there's been a little bit of hesitancy. I don't know the exact type of term. I don't know if he's looking for 3, 4, 5 years, or initially was, but that's left a little bit of hesitation from some teams because teams want to know: is this a one-off? Is this just the 1 year in the middle of your career where you bounce back and then you're going to dip again, or is this legit? There's obviously risk tied to it. But overall, it just doesn't seem like teams are willing to give him the additional term he's been looking for. And that's kind of been a sticking point. I don't think it's so much the money per se, although obviously that affects term. But I think it's been more so the length of the deal that he's been looking for, or at least initially was. And I think there's been some pivot on that front. To what extent at this point, I'm not sure. But I think he's probably going to have to end up, unless he's taking a low AAV, he's probably going to end up taking shorter term, maybe a 2-year deal, in order to prove himself kind of all over again, so to speak.
Well, there's a former Pittsburgh Penguin. You have to be older to remember this, but there's a former Pittsburgh Penguin free agent who had one good year playing alongside Mario Lemieux and then went out on the open market in Detroit, a team which I was working for at the time, signed him, and his name was Warren Young. And, of course, he never had a year close to that year ever again. That was a little bit different because he was a winger for Mario Lemieux, and I think all three of us could score goals if we played alongside Mario Lemieux back in those days. But for people who remember that, that would be a story that you would tell, like, hey, be careful here because don't forget Warren Young. Patrick Kane doesn't seem like he's going back to Detroit, or Stevie would have done it by now. I think he's going back to Chicago and play with Bedard. I mean, to me, and I don't want to do guesswork here in fantasy league stuff, but to me it would be great for Bedard to have a guy like Patrick Kane around him that's got such great offensive talent still and such a great mind for the game. You see that as something?
Well, I mean, Chicago, it's no secret. Chicago has been looking for at least one winger to add to their top six, to play with Bedard, to play with Frundell. I mean, that, depending on how that contract may be structured, that could certainly be an option, for Chicago. I mean, there's been some talk, does he go to Buffalo, go home and wrap up the career kind of at home, which he's always kind of alluded to potentially being interested in doing. But Chicago would certainly be an interesting one because, again, as I mentioned, they're looking for that winger. They've been looking for a while at somebody that they can add both via free agency and the trade market. With the free agent market drying up, adding Patrick Kane on a low-risk type of deal because you can attach bonuses to it, performance bonuses, that might be, an option. The longer things kind of play out over the course of the summer, if he's still available, that might be something where he goes back and wraps up his career back in Chicago. But again, I've heard Buffalo as a potential, depending on how that money looks. They haven't replaced Tuck. They're still kind of circling the Hellebuck stuff. Although I think there's going to have to be a course correction there if they do get to the finish line on it. But they still want to add somebody within their top six as well. So that'd be an interesting kind of potential fit there. For me, it'd be Buffalo, Chicago as the ones that kind of pique a little bit of interest.
The bigger news now are the RFAs. And 14 years after the Flyers kind of rocked the hockey world by signing Shea Weber.
Yep.
To a 14-year, $110 million offer sheet, which was subsequently matched by Nashville to keep him there. They offer Leo Carlsson of Anaheim 5 years, $18 million, $90 million in total, makes him the highest paid player in NHL history, either way you cut it, whether he goes to Philly or it's matched by Anaheim. Now, on the heels of Pavel Mintyukov signing on Sunday night, 5 years, $7.2 million, they only have just under $10 million in cap space. So with Cutter Gauthier, a 41-goal scorer, still out there, and I think he's got the potential to pot 55 at some point. Where do you see this mess landing for the Anaheim Ducks? And looks like Philly maybe have them over a barrel. Do they match it? Do they let him go?
I'd be really surprised if they don't match it. There's a lot of different storylines kind of tied to this whole thing. There's frustration from the player that the Ducks weren't able to get to where would have been a comfortable medium for everybody. There's the frustration that the Ducks tried to think that they were bluffing on everything, and then, well, clearly they weren't. And there's a little bit of frustration that how come we couldn't figure this out a lot sooner? Why did it take to this point? Why couldn't we do something earlier on in the season, mid-season? I know at some point they just held everything off to focus on the rest of the year, but once they were able to get back to the negotiating table, why was there such a hardball type of approach to this and with respect to Gauthier as well? Remember, they moved out Zellweger. They moved out Mason McTavish. They tried to prep for more money being allocated for the remaining RFAs. I don't think Anaheim thought 18 was coming in. I think they thought it was in the 15 range, 15, 16 range. But, we're sitting here now waiting. The Ducks have until Friday to match or take the 4 first-round pick compensation. I'd be surprised if they don't match. There is and has been talk over the last 24 hours that they've started to explore creating additional cap space, giving themselves a little bit more breathing room. I know a lot of people are bringing up Troy Terry on LTIR. He won't be back till December, but that only frees up 3.8, 3.94 million in cap space. And then eventually when he's back, you have to be cap compliant anyway. So that really doesn't solve much. It just buys them a little bit of time, but also backs them into a tighter corner if they start the year in that scenario. It sounds like in the last little bit, Frank Vetrano's name's back out there in the trade market. Heard a little bit about Alex Killorn. He's got a 15-team no trade. Vetrano has a 7-team no trade. There's some chatter that maybe the Ducks have to attach a draft pick because they need to free up the cap space. As you mentioned, with Mintyukov now locked in, and if they match the 18 mil, they only have 9.9 million in cap space.
Yeah,
that's not nearly enough for Cutter Gauthier, who the number, depending on the hour of day and depending who you talk to, may be increasing even more. Last I heard was in the 15s, and it might be going higher than that in terms of the ask based on now the $18 million offer sheet. I think their camp and Cutter himself is banking on him being definitely a 50-goal-plus scorer at some point in his career. There is a pathway for the Ducks to get, obviously, cap compliant, to get Gauthier signed, match Leo, but you have to move some guys out, and you've got to be creative in how you pull it off. And because of some of the free agents that are still out there, maybe you take a 1-year deal flyer on a kid or on one of these guys, and they say, okay, I'll jump in here. Let's push for the playoffs. I can boost my numbers, get a better deal a year from now. But a lot of balls up in the air with the Ducks. I think the Mintyukov signing caught a lot of people off guard that it was going to be that high, that it was 7.2. There was initial talk like in the 4.5 to 5 range, but clearly there was a team out there. And I know Carolina and Montreal were a couple teams poking around on Mintyukov, potentially going the offer sheet route. I don't know if they were going necessarily that high, especially Carolina, who has Nikishin and he's looking for 7-8 mil himself. But an interesting position for the Ducks. And again, they have until Friday to kind of figure this whole thing out with Leo.
Do you think the number on Mintyukov was perhaps affected by the fact that they lost their 3 main veteran defensemen from last year, Captain Gudas, Trouba, and John Carlson, who was sent to Carolina, but ultimately wound up signing in Tampa.
Yeah, I think that definitely played a factor. And then again, you move out Zellweger as well, and teams are going, well, you don't have options here. We may go high on this number. And I think the argument from Dan Milstein, his agent, back to the Ducks was, hey, we have a legitimate option somewhere else. I don't know necessarily if an official offer sheet was tendered or if a team was just prepared to present one and we're just waiting on the okay back from Milstein's and Minchikov's camp. But Minchikov's back in Russia. So there's also the time factor that played into account there, time zone factor. But I think in terms of timing, I think when they went back to the Ducks, it was, we have a legitimate offer or option that we can roll with unless you hit this kind of range. And I think the Ducks realized they had almost no choice but to do it.
Neil, I wanted to ask you this because with this offer sheet, which is really rocking the NHL right now, I got to think that there's got to be some resentment from Pat Verbeek towards Keith Jones and Danny Briere that their entire salary structure has been blown up. And as Davis pointed out, they've got to now jump through hoops to keep the same strong players that they had in their lineup from a season ago and perhaps move out more asset in order to be able to do so.
Well, you watched Pat Verbeek play hockey, didn't you? During his career, he's a ball of resentment. I mean, he played the little ball of hate the whole time. So I'm sure he's pissed off at Keith Jones and Danny Briere. There's no doubt about it. But a contract like this goes way above Keith Jones and Danny Briere. It's up with the folks that run Comcast or whatever the name of their owner is at this point, NBC or I don't know. It's up with those guys. They have to make that decision. Do they want to screw the league on this? Because I can tell you in my time, you didn't want to walk into a Board of Governors meeting or a GM's meeting after doing a deal like Sakic or one of those. So you just didn't want to be there. That's why I purposely didn't want to do the deal. And I'm with Dave on this one. I find it hard to believe that Henry Samueli, with $70 billion net worth, isn't going to match. And that doesn't mean that he can afford it, even though he's got $70 billion, because that means he's just going to lose more money with the Anaheim Ducks franchise. But you know what? You sort of just can't let guys go in a 32-team league. Leo Carlssons don't come along very often, even though he's not yet a star in my mind in the league. I mean, he's an up-and-coming great young player, but he's 29 goals is his peak so far, I think, this past year. We're not talking about Wayne Gretzky yet. So I'm sure the league's mad at the Flyers. And it's not just the Ducks that'll be mad at them. It'll be everybody that's got a top player that they know is coming up for renegotiation. It'll go all the way out to Edmonton Oilers saying like, okay, now you've really screwed us on McDavid. Because if Leo Carlsson's getting 18, I mean, what are we going to have to pay McDavid in a Canadian market? And Dave, you can comment on this being Canadian like me and sitting where you're sitting right now in Ontario. When I saw the Leo Carlsson deal come down, I'm thinking to myself, how are Canadian teams and small market American teams, but mostly Canadian teams, how are they going to survive? Yeah. Because let's take it to 20 million, just for an even number, because it's easier to work in my head with 20 million. 20 million is 26 million thereabouts, right, in Canadian. Mm-hmm. And 26 million has to come in through the ticket window or has to come in through suite revenue or has to come in through advertising to make up for 20 million in the American market. And that's not even mentioning all the scuttlebutt about income taxes and all that stuff. I mean, sitting in Canada and doing all your work from Canada, where do you see this? Because it's got to be really upsetting to the competitive balance for Canadian teams.
For the Winnipegs and the Ottawas, it's concerning. Not now, but say 3 to 5 years from now, it can be concerning. I can tell you, I've talked to some people around the Sens who there's a little bit of concern where Thomas Chabot's next ask is going to be, especially with Bowen Byram's deal in Chicago, pulling in $12.5 million over 6 years, $12.5 per year. there are teams now looking and trying to forecast and go, okay, well, here are the trends. Here's where things are going. Shabbat's due in a year or two, whatever it is. What's that ask going to look like? He's definitely going to be in the 10 plus. How much more? There are other teams looking at this, like Winnipeg, to get Kyle Connor locked in when they did. Tremendously fortunate last year, or the start of the season, on his extension. Obviously, they got to figure out this Hellebuck stuff. But to have like teams trying to get these guys locked in, it's the younger players that are going to be cashing in more. Like Cole Perfetti filed for ARB. They're trying to figure something out there with him. But the potential of what he can reach, and I agree with you. I don't think Leo Carlsson is at stardom yet. I think everything is aligning for him to be moving in that direction and be a potential superstar in the league. He's not cracking that yet, but the potential is there. So now not only are you paying for what they're capable of doing now, you're also paying for the potential. And that's going to affect a lot of these deals, especially the ones out of ELCs and the ones that are 25 years old where they can hit UFA status in 2 years. You're going to be looking at full term. And with the way the CBA has changed term, like starting September 15th, those 8-year extensions dropped to 7, and the 7-year deals for after July 1 dropped to 6. So you're going to be taking all of those things into account when you're negotiating with these younger players. And this is where it affects most. Like I talked to a bunch of agents after the Carlsson deal came through, and they're just ear to ear going, these younger guys are going to cash in, and we're loving every minute of this. But from the team side of it, it's certainly concerning. You're going to have to forecast a little bit differently. And with the cap going up, that means the floor is going up. You've got to reach that total. And for markets like Winnipeg and Ottawa to an extent, and some of the lower market U.S. teams, it is concerning. And I know a lot of people say, well, the Samuelis, as you mentioned, they're $70 billion. And Winnipeg's owners, Jebny's one of the richest guys in the league and this and that. They can just spend the money. If I'm going to negotiate for a car at $50,000 and I'm going, okay, I can stretch it to 52, but with all the bells and whistles, the final price is 58. I'll agree to it reluctantly, but doesn't mean, sure, I can pay for the extra $6,000, but doesn't mean I want to. Doesn't mean I'm overly thrilled about it. Extrapolate that in the millions, and that's what a lot of these owners are looking at, going, I guess we have to, but doesn't mean I'm happy about it. Doesn't mean I want to spend the extra money. We're in an interesting state in the league right now where, yes, everything's looking good. And by all accounts, we're going to 33 in the next couple of years with what's happening with Houston/Auston and then Atlanta soon after that. That will create a bit of a buffer for a good, 5 to 10 year stretch, maybe. But we've got to see where everything else goes with respect to league revenues that are going to offset the fact that we're going to be seeing close to, 20% of the cap salaries becoming a norm for league superstars. What do you think McCarr's going to make on his next deal after 18 is coming in? Like Quinn Hughes, there was already talk at the draft, guys, that Connor Bedard was looking for 17 and that Quinn Hughes was going to be signing for around or just over 17 and mini on his next deal. That was before this even happened. This Carlsson thing even happened. So we better get used to these big numbers because we're hitting 20 soon, and we're going to surpass that in probably a year or two.
So, Dave, one of the things that bothers me, and Vic knows I rant about this all the time, is with the cap, there's a misunderstanding of a lot of people that this is a monopoly game. And that, when they raise the cap, that means they just throw more monopoly money at your chair where you're sitting at the table, and you've got all this more money to spend. And so, the cap's going to 108 million now. But they're okay because they're 20 million under that. So now they got 20 million to spend. Well, no, they don't.
Right.
They only have to spend what the owner tells you can spend because there still has to be a budget. Do you find this collective mindset that's going on now around the hockey universe to be annoying? Because I do. I find it to be just like a total misunderstanding of the economics of hockey.
Yeah, just because, the cap next year is projected to be 113.5. Just because it's going up another $9.5 million doesn't, exactly to your point, doesn't mean these teams can spend the extra $9.5 million. Like Anaheim did not want to be a cap team, even with, and I think they understood that they were going to be spending significantly more because of Carlsson and Gauthier, and they had McTavish at the time and all that. The understanding that I had was, okay, we can spend within whatever percentage of the cap, but we still don't want to reach that. Now they're kind of forced, and I think ownership, with the rebuild, they didn't spend too much. They tried to spend on deals to surpass the floor and whatnot. I think there was an understanding that there was going to be a significant jump in their own salary cap, and I think ownership was fine with that. I don't think to this extent, but there are teams that have their internal caps, and just because in 2 years we're going to be hitting 120 mil, that's great. That's great for the New York, Chicago's, LA's, Toronto's, Montreal's, and so on. But for other teams, it's going to be, we're going to be 100, and that's where we're going to fall. And is there an opportunity cost tied to making the playoffs? And if we spend a little extra at the trade deadline, if we get into the play, sure, all of that factors in afterwards. But when the season starts, or when July 1 rolls around with the new NHL calendar kicks in, this is our internal cap, boys, and go figure it out.
You are tuning into NHL Wraparound, presented by UBS Financial Services, Inc. We're being joined by Dave Pagnotta from really outstanding website, The Fourth Period, and you can also check him out on NHL Network and also on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio. Dave, continuing that theme, 28-29 is projected to have a ceiling of $123 million. So that floor that you mentioned is going to be somewhere between 95 and 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
You've got some uber UFAs coming into the crosshairs at that time. Connor McDavid, Auston Matthews, Zach Werenski, and that $20 million paycheck seems like it is just a matter of time. But as these numbers continue to grow, and you'll have new CBA coming up around 2030, is this really going to be sustainable for the NHL? And like you said, it all looks great now, but
right.
Are we getting into that space that at some point it may crash and burn? And we may have another work stoppage. As we all know, we've had 3 of these, including the season that was lost in 04-05.
The thing to factor in with the way that the cap has been increasing incrementally, 7.5, 8.5, 9.5 million over that 3-year span, and then it'll continue to increase. The thing that we have to factor in as well is those COVID years. Those couple of seasons where the season was cut short. Those seasons were cut short. At the time, things were still on an upward trajectory, but because of what happened, it's caused a larger increase in the subsequent years because the cap didn't get a steady incline.
True.
It had to drop and then bounce up. I think moving forward, I think there's an understanding that at some point we're going to start to kind of even out a little bit. The cap will go up, but we're not going to be seeing $9.5 million jumps in a few years. At least that's the notion from the league, that eventually we're going to start to not necessarily plateau, but we're just going to have a more steady course versus the incline that we're at. And that's incorporating new teams coming in, because it's happening. That incorporates the new US TV deal that'll kick in a year or two, whatever it is. The Canadian broadcast the Canadian broadcast landscape. We'll get an announcement on that in, I imagine, the next 10 days, 7 to 10 days. Sportsnet's new deal with Rogers, that 12-year deal starts now. Amazon's extending. There's some talk of a third Canadian English rights holder taking one day a night, and then the French broadcasts as well. So we're going to get an announcement on that in the next, I imagine, 7 to 10 days to coincide with the release of the new schedule. So that'll provide, a little bit more funding into the league. And then, as I mentioned, the US deal expansion and whatnot. So this 10-year window that we've got here, everything looks great. But the concern really is 10 years from now, where are we going to be? And where's the landscape going to be? Things have shifted so quickly in a short period of time. It's hard to properly project, but on the NHLPA side and the NHL side, both are trying to do their best in order to, and along with their teams doing their internal stuff, trying to project where things are going to go from that side. But I think from the cap side of things, yeah, we're going to see these bigger jumps probably in the next another 2 years. And then it's going to start to kind of even out a little bit. But at 123 million, guys, 20% of the cap is just under 25 mil. It's 24.6 million is your max AAV that you can bring in, or at least the max salary that you can make per year. And teams are going to utilize that. They're going to take this model that Danny Briere and Keith Jones put into this Leo Carlsson offer sheet and say, you're getting 39 million in 11 months, 11 months. They're going to front load that as much as they can for teams that have those financial resources to try to pluck players away. And I think that's where you can flex a little bit more, is by the upfront cash. And look, it changes September 15th as well in terms of how the annual salary structure is put together. You're not going to be able to necessarily do this per se, but you can still front load it to a degree that's going to make other teams a little bit weary of whether or not that's the best choice for them to match.
There was another offer sheet that was out there that really flew in under the radar late last week.
Yes.
And that was Barrett Hayton.
Yeah, good
being
point.
signed to a 1-year, $4.775 million deal with the New Jersey Devils. So if Utah matches this, he can't be traded for a year, and it becomes a UFA a year from now. So that really blocks them into a corner. But more from the Devils' perspective, this is a third-line player. And what did he score last year? Like 10 goals, Neil? Something like that?
Yeah, that's what I looked up. Yep.
What's the sense for Jersey here?
Yeah, I think the decision comes down tomorrow. I think Utah has until tomorrow to match or take the second-round pick. Utah and New Jersey spoke ahead of the draft about a trade involving Hayton. New Jersey wanted him. They tried to go that route. Obviously, they didn't agree on a trade. And then I don't know if New Jersey pre-warned them or what happened, but they obviously got him to an offer sheet and signed him. They're looking for methodical ads that fit the style and structure that they've got, that factor in more ice time, more responsibility, different team system. Maybe he becomes the player that a lot of people thought he could evolve into. Maybe he's not a third-line guy. Maybe he's going to be, say, a second-line, type of player. New Jersey's been looking to add a first-line winger and another mid-six guy for a while before even Meta came into the mix, and now he has, and they're still searching for that. And maybe they check one box off with Hayton, but they tried to trade for him, didn't work out. Bill Armstrong and Sonny weren't able to figure it out, and they go this approach. But you're right, that one did fly under the radar because Philly stole everyone's thunder on that regard. New Jersey's been looking, and clearly, seeing the free agent crop that was there, they didn't feel, it was that there was an option for them in that regard, that it was worth it to give up a second-round pick in order to bring this player in. If Utah matches, as you said, they can't do anything they basically walk this player to free agency. So, Utah's in a little bit of a predicament in that regard, but, one day a couple people believe they're matching. The other day, people believe they're taking the pick. I think they'll take the pick. That's a gut reaction, trying to I don't have any inside knowledge on that. That's just my gut on that, but interesting bit of business by New Jersey, the way that they approach this one.
And they sort of set him up to be a total free agent no matter where he is, right? Whether he signs in, he's already signed, but whether or not he plays for New Jersey or for Utah, Bill Armstrong sort of got his hands tied now by that contract. Let's have some fun. Dave, all three of us can do this. 3 teams to 5 teams that are better than they were 3 weeks ago, and 3 to 5 teams that are worse than they were 3 to 5 weeks ago. I've got mine ready to go. And it's hard if you don't have something in front of you, because it's hard to remember who are the whole 32 teams. I'll start so that it makes it easier for you two guys. Here's who I think's better than they were 3 weeks ago. I think Florida Panthers are better, and we all knew they would be. I think Washington Capitals are better. By the guys they signed over the summer, and the fact that OV's coming back helps the whole thing. I think Bill Armstrong improved his team with the guys that he signed. I think they're a better team. And I think San Jose is a better team because of the moves that they made. I don't think they're necessarily economically wise moves that they made in some cases, especially with Darnell Nurse, but
Mm-hmm.
They took the whole taco on that one. Let's talk about teams that are worse. I think it's kind of obvious to me. Ottawa loses Brady Tkachuk. They can't possibly stay where they are. And if they lose Claude Giroux as another leader, they've lost 2 leaders on that team. Pittsburgh Penguins, I don't know who they're going to play in goal. Maybe Sid's going to play goal for them next year, but they got Shilovs and they got somebody else. And I think because we've just been talking about it, Anaheim lost some players. Yes, they're keeping their players if they do keep Leo Carlsson, but I don't think they're as good. I think their losses are more than their gains. And so that's my guys. Who wants to go next?
I'm going to hand it to Dave.
Okay. Washington, without question, I think for me, has come out big winners in this one. You know, you add Kyrou, you add Tuck, you add Darnay on the back end, add some more physicality there. Interesting contract, but nevertheless, good guy to have. And they had interest in him going back into the season as well. So I like those ads. I think 1 through 9, and Boone Jenner as well. Almost forgot. I mean, maybe all 4 lines. They might be the deepest. They may have the deepest forward core, at least in the East. And then you've got Thompson and Lindgren in goal with that blue line. I mean, they might be an early favorite for me, along with Carolina coming out of the East, the way that they've stacked up. So I really like what they've done. You know what? I like what, under the circumstances, I like what Toronto's done as well. You add Darren Radish, that was a need for them. You got a better goalie in Bobrovsky than what they've had. And they've bolstered their bottom 6. And McKenna aside, you know, maybe he's in the 50, 60-point range. Maybe that's pushing it. I'm not sure. I know they wanted to address another top 6 winger. They didn't do that. But I think their bottom 6 is better than it was last season. I think the right side's better. I think goaltending's better. So I would give them a bump in terms of being better than they were, you know, a few weeks ago. Let's see. Trying to maneuver here. Well, I'll go with those 2 for now because I'm trying to think.
That's fine. No, that's fine.
A few other
worst.
clubs. But Washington without question. I think Toronto got better as well, as I mentioned. On the L side, I'd add Utah to that mix in terms of the W's. You know, bringing in Trocheck, bringing in forgot the other guy. Andersley, yes. Thank you. Adding that as well. Nice contract for him too. I think they got better, and they're gonna input, I think, at least one of their young studs into that lineup too, whether it's a Ginla or Simashev on the back end. I know Baudouin left. Desnoyers they're high on, but he may need a little bit of extra time. But I like where Utah's going, the direction that they're going. They moved out Dursey, so maybe there's the avenue for Simashev to jump in there. Anaheim for me on the L column, just because I don't think they got better. And I almost want to leave it up to what they're going to do in order to, you know, what reactionary moves they're going to be making here and how creative they get. But for now, I kind of put them in that territory. Let's see, rolling down the list.
You've got Ottawa. Ottawa is
Ottawa
one
for
I
sure.
mentioned. I
think they've regressed a little bit because other teams got better, right? Like I know they were a good team last year, and you know they're still looking for a right shot D to add to that mix. They're still looking for a top 6 winger to bring in. I like the Eklund move. I like the fact that, you know, I like the direction they pivoted because the writing was on the wall with Brady. You know, moving the 9th, getting Eklund in, I like it, but I was expecting a little more from this group, and we haven't seen it yet. So for now, I throw them in there, you know, kind of as well. Dallas is interesting for me. You know, you lose out on Bork because you have to move him out. Robertson's now going to ARB, but they can still figure something out beforehand. But at least the offer sheet threat is gone. But even that didn't seem like much of a threat. But they didn't really do anything else. You know, they move out Lyubushkin to free up the money. But I'm still waiting to see what else kind of happens with that group. Everybody thought Jamie Benn was coming back, but beyond that, I thought there'd be some type of additional movement there. We just haven't seen it.
Well, you guys have taken most of the teams off of the buffet table, and I agree on Washington and San Jose as teams to really look out for this year. But I'm going to take the other side of it, and I'm going to give 4 teams that I've kind of got the Debbie Downer going on. And first one is Boston Bruins, who had, I think, by a lot of accounts, a surprise trip to the playoffs last year. Were pretty game in their series against the Buffalo Sabres. But I almost see, Dave, like a year ago, so much went right for the Washington Capitals, and a lot of guys had career years, and I think we saw the same thing out of the Bruins last season. And to think that it's going to be sustainable, I'm a little bit leery on whether or not that's going to happen. Another team that I'm looking at is the New York Islanders. And they lose Anders Lee. They didn't really add a lot. And the team didn't make the playoffs last year. So maybe Peter DeBoer has a secret sauce with the team that he's got left, but I don't think that this team is improved. The LA Kings are another one that Kenny Holland almost took the same strategies a year ago and added a bunch of older free agents. And I believe that with a team like San Jose coming up, and it's as close as that race was last season in not only the Western Conference, but the Pacific Division in general, I see them getting past this year. And the other team that we haven't mentioned, back in the East, the Detroit Red Wings. They've got this Dylan Larkin mess. They haven't made the playoffs in 10 years. They will quite possibly lose Patrick Kane. And I just don't see any improvement there that is going to elevate this team into the playoffs and that drought, Dave.
Yeah. It's a good one on Detroit. And teams started poking around on DeBrincat. Final year of his deal. If you're moving out Larkin, what are the chances you move to Brinkett? It's a good point. I think the only ad I know they're looking for another forward, another winger, but I think it was just Arvidsson that they've added. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if they've added anybody else. Right. But does that move the needle that much? I know he had a great year in Boston, but I don't think that you're right. I don't think they've improved much. And they've got the young defenseman who's an RFA that they've got to get locked in. If Detroit wanted a centerpiece on futures, and a good return, a really good return for Larkin, but prospects, young NHL talent, and picks, they could have done that already.
Yeah.
But they are holding out for NHL caliber talent, proven talent now, and I'm not seeing the fit. And Stevie Yzerman's going to hold firm as long as he can. If this gets pushed into training camp of the season, how's that going to affect the room? Your captain doesn't want to be there anymore. So do you take the C off? Do you pass that on to Mo Sider or Lucas Raymond? And if you do that, how's that going to affect things even more? And it's not like this was a secret. Like Larkin acknowledged this last year, not just this past season, the season prior, his disappointment with the team. So this has been brewing for a while. The longer this goes, the more if this gets into camp in the start of the season, I'm really curious how the dynamic of that room is going to be.
We wanted to send our listeners off into the summer because now we start to get into a little bit more of a quiet period, even though there's going to be some business that goes on. But we wanted to kind of springboard by giving people a lot to think about. And Dave, you've given us a lot to think about as we kind of, step away, Neil and I, for the next few weeks. So we thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. Had a lot of fun, guys. Enjoy the summer as much as you can.
Well, enjoy it up there where you are, Dave, and try to stay away from the horseflies and the mosquitoes because how are they up there now?
It's not ideal. I mean, I love to fish, so they'll be coming at me all summer, but I'll suck it up and deal with it.
We look forward to talking with you again soon.
You got it. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Whenever we get to the end of the season and we see all of the activity that has taken place, and then you get a guest like Dave Pagnotta on, my head starts to hurt when you look at not only what's happened, all the movement, and of course we're going to have our summer coolers coming up in about 6 weeks. But boy, it's an awful lot to wrap your head around. And Dave just gave us a ton of information, a lot of backstory, and really added to this discussion today.
The volume of information at this time of year combined with that shirt that you've got on makes my head hurt as well. You know, having to look at that shirt and then try to remember all the teams in the league. Boy, it's almost too much for me.
You get the blue one next year, so stop your complaining. And you don't have to look at this again for another year either. So, you know, things are looking up for you. I'll tell you what else was looking up was the growth that we enjoyed during the course of this season. We are pushing towards 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. We have had a phenomenal month of June with Facebook. We've also grown on TikTok, and we're looking forward to continuing our partnership with Buzzer coming into the 26-27 season.
Yeah, that's everything has been really going good, and we've got to thank all of you that are listening to us or watching us on YouTube. Just so many thanks for helping us get this thing up and rolling. We're now ending 2.5 years at doing this, and it's always fun for me, and I know for Vic. We always have a good time doing this and bringing you whatever we can as best we can. But it's really all of you out there that tell your friends, try to get people to subscribe, and the bigger our numbers can be, the more growth we can uncover on the way up.
Perhaps people would like to reach us during the course of our little hiatus.
Yes, and if you do, you can shoot us an email, neil@nhlwraparound.com, or what's your first name again? Oh, Vic at nhlwraparound.com. You know, all of our podcasts are on any platform, so wherever you are, you can get us on Apple Podcasts, you can get us on Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. Please leave a review if you have the opportunity, or push subscribe so that you get a notification every time we come out with a new piece.
Speaking of subscribers, we want to give a quick nod to those that have joined us on YouTube recently, and we haven't done this in a while. So big thanks to Sergey Andrushenko, Edgar S., Paul Sparks, Brian A., The Sunset Pearl, Robert M., Samo, Jimmy Jameson, Nell C., Dave Maney, Robert Flynn, Uri Zivchak, Patrick Allen, and Wayne Baxter.
You can also find us on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Rayd8, RAYD, number 8.tv. And of course, as Vic mentioned before, our partnership with bzzr.com, where you get a lot of great content from a lot of great creators on all the different sports. Our website is nhlwraparound.com, where everything we've ever done is on that website,
including this show. And with that, a big thanks to Dave Pagnotta from the Fourth Period website, and you can also check him out on NHL Network and NHL Network Radio on Sirius XM. Also, big thanks, as always, to UBS Financial Services, Inc. NHL Wraparound and UBS Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated. UBS is a sponsor of NHL Wraparound. No other affiliation, relationship, or endorsement is made, suggested, intended, or should be implied or inferred between UBS and NHL Wraparound or any of the individuals or businesses and or their respective products and services appearing in this program. So with that, before we sign off, want to give you our immediate upcoming plans. Our spring cleanings, which we started probably in early April as teams were getting eliminated, they are going to be re-released as individual episodes in the next 10 to 14 days. Obviously, there might be some outdated material given the amount of change that has taken place since then, but still pretty good idea for people to see what we thought a year ago during our summer coolers and how things ended up for all 32 teams.
Yeah, and I think we did pretty good, though, but you'll have to listen and make your own judgments as to how you thought we did.
Neil, you may drop a short or two in the next couple of weeks, depending on what takes place. And of course, you can find those on our Facebook Reels. But I'm going to be away for about 10 days, starting in a week and a half or so. So it's going to be up to you to carry the mail a little bit while I am rummaging through the ruins in Peru.
Which will be ruined or they're already ruined?
Well, they're preparing for my arrival. Let's just say that.
Well, after Vic gets back, we'll be doing some celebrity show, and we'll be doing definitely some Hall of Fame editions. Those are really enjoyable for both of us because we've got such a long memory of guys that have ended up in the Hall of Fame, and it's an honor to have them on the show. Summer coolers will be coming your way not until the third week of August. Obviously, we got to wait and make sure that we've got the teams have got everything in place so that we can do our humble evaluation of each and every one of them.
And humble we are, aren't we?
We are.
Long season, a lot of material that we have covered on players and teams throughout the league. I know I can speak for myself, and I'm sure for you too. We have had a great time doing this, and we are always grateful for the support that we have gotten from our listeners and viewers across all the platforms.
No, that's for sure. Without them, of course, we wouldn't even have a show. But I think I know more about the league, Vic, now than I ever did as GM of the New York Rangers. I mean, I know the league inside out by doing this show, and I really feel on top of everything now. It's hard to stay on top of everything if you're not involved. And so being involved with this podcast and trying to bring it out to our listeners and viewers makes me want to sit on the couch every night and watch every game I can so that I can have a authoritative opinion on things.
We'll be there soon enough. But until then, to all of our listeners, thank you, thank you, thank you. Enjoy your summer, and we'll be speaking with you periodically until we get to our summer coolers. Take care, all.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.